Welcome to the NOSA Unleashed podcast, where we want to expose and remove the stigma surrounding mental health by discussing real-life challenges and obstacles that keep us paralyzed and fearful to move forward. Let us inspire you to believe there is more to life than what you are currently experiencing. Now is the time to end the silence and pursue the path to purpose and fulfillment. We will do this together because no one stands alone. Welcome back to the NOSA Unleashed podcast. I'm Laura Burgoyne, joined here with my sister Connie Blackwood.
Hello.
And this month, actually today, we want to talk about loneliness. And I think that this is something that we all experience from time to time. And it's important that we, talk about it and talk about maybe why some of the reasons this happens and how we can move through it when it does come. So welcome, Connie, to the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
When I was thinking about what we wanted to talk about today, and I was thinking about the topic of loneliness, there was really one specific word that highlighted to me, right? And often for me personally, when I have felt loneliness, I have really stepped into, a mentality or a habit of isolation. And I think, honestly, when it comes to loneliness, I think that is a really huge part of loneliness. And, um, you know, I find that I tend to isolate. It's actually it's like a double-sided coin, right? Either I isolate and then I feel lonely, or I feel lonely and then I feel like nobody understands, and so then I isolate, right? And, I think we have to recognize both sides of the coin and, really, in a specific moment, try to gauge, like, why am I feeling lonely in this moment? Like, what's happening in my environment? What's happening inside of me? What are the thoughts that I'm having? What's contributing to me feeling these ways? And I think that would really help us, be able to process a lot of it and move through it.
I agree. For me, I've felt the same way, right? Like, you know, um, when you're in it, it's hard to get out because I almost feel like your loneliness then keeps you in isolation, and then your isolation keeps you feeling lonely. And it's just this vicious cycle that keeps going around and around. And until you break out of it by reaching out to someone, you typically stay there. And, you know, it's hard to do that when you're feeling like no one understands you, or no one hears you, or no one cares about you
Mhm.
or what you're going through. So those are the things that typically go through my mind, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally relate with that because that's the other thing that, often comes across my mind is when I'm feeling lonely, right? I feel like I'm the only one going through what I'm going through, right? And I feel like no one else understands. And, you know, what I've realized through, you know, me processing through a lot of these lonely times that I've had is, you know, I've maybe had a desire for a friend to reach out to me because I was going through some really challenging circumstances. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, my friend should just know to reach out to me, right? They should just, they should be able to sense in the cosmos that Laura needs a friend right now and that they need to call me, right? And but I've had to come to this realization that, you know what? They have lives too. They have their own struggles they're going through. And, if I'm feeling lonely, then it's my responsibility to do something about it. And it's in that moment where I actually need to call up my friend and say, "Hey, I'm going through a really tough time right now. Can we just talk, or can we, meet together? Can we spend some time together? I just need somebody," right? And I guarantee you, every time I've done that, their response has been, "Absolutely, Laura. How can I help?" they have open ears. And then, I start feeling less lonely. Right. And so I think a huge part of us coming out of loneliness is being willing to be vulnerable, right? Being willing to share with those who we trust and who are close to us and who we know have our backs, in those moments that we're willing to, share with them the nitty gritty of what's going in our life so that they actually know how to support us. Because it's not that they don't care, right? Sometimes we feel that people don't care, but it's just that they're wrapped up in their own stuff, right? And they're just trying to figure out how they're gonna get through their day. They're not thinking about, how's Laura doing or how's Connie doing or, and so that's why we need to communicate well with friendships. Like, we need to be willing to share where we're at.
And I think people expect that if you're not doing okay, that you'll reach out, right? Um, Most of the
Right.
time we just assume that people are doing great if they're not talking to us about it because we have no idea otherwise. And so we make that assumption that everything's going good, and very rarely do we ask. Very rarely do we reach out and probe people because we also know that can be intrusive for people if they don't want to talk about it. And so I think we try to be respectful by not asking questions sometimes. And so
Right.
if we don't reach out when we're feeling that way, we're hindering ourselves because our friends want to be there for us, but they don't know something is going on. And it's not that they don't care. A lot of the time, it's because they just have no clue. And, it's interesting how we expect people to be telepathic almost when that's not realistic. And then we
Yeah.
pray that God will put it on their hearts when all we have to do is text them. Like, why do we need God to do the work for us when we have our phone right there where we could text them and say, hey, I need prayer. Hey, can we talk? Hey, do you have time for coffee? Like, there's no reason why we can't reach out. But I think sometimes when we're in those spaces though, it's like it almost works against us because we are like, we can't reach out because they're not going to understand, even if I do. And so then I'm just going to be stuck here anyway. So why put the effort in to try to reach out to this person, right? And if they
Yeah.
really did care, then they would have the telepathic sense to intervene. Well, that's not realistic. None of us, as far as I know, are telepathic. And if you are, well, then definitely share it with me because that would be an interesting conversation to find out how that happened for you.
The cool thing about that, Connie, though, and this, as you were saying that, I got this, you know, memory. Well, first of all, I laughed at what you just said because that's exactly what I think. Sometimes I'm like, God, if you could only just put this on Connie's heart or this person's heart to call me, be like, I've done that. So that's why I laughed at that. But number two, the second thing that came to mind as you were saying that was sometimes God does put it on my heart,
Mm-hmm.
right? So sometimes God does, like, all of a sudden start thinking about a friend and I'm like, wow, why is I can't get them off my mind, and I feel compelled to pray for them. I feel compelled to call them, and sometimes I do, and I send them a text and I say, how are you doing? You've been on my heart. I just want you to know I'm praying for you and I'm here if there's anything that you need. And almost 100% of the time I get a message back, oh my goodness, thank you so much. That was so timely. And then they tell me what's going on and they needed a friend, right? So sometimes God does speak to us and give us, just that unction to reach out to somebody. And if you ever sense that, I encourage you to follow through on that because that person likely is going through some struggles and I would say they probably need you at that time. If they're continually coming to mind, I believe that that could be an opportunity for you to be a blessing in their life.
I definitely agree with that. I just feel like we shouldn't rely on God to like put it on other people's hearts. I think we need to be proactive as much as we can. But like I said, sometimes we're so deep in that hole, then we do need those people that God's put it on their heart to call or reach out to do that. For sure. I agree with you there.
Yeah. And Connie, the other day we were talking about this and you mentioned something about people of peace. And I love that because um, you know, we want to we want to be very clear and that you're not just going to be vulnerable with just anyone,
Mm-hmm.
right? You really do need to be selective and be very careful with who you share your heart with because some people will hold it as a treasure and other people won't, right? And that could actually make you feel even worse, feel more loneliness or rejection, right? And so it's important that we have these people of peace. So Connie, can you just speak to that? Like what does that mean and what do those relationships look like?
So what I mean when I say people of peace is that they're people in our lives that care about us, that walk with us, that support us, and they encourage us. And it's interesting because a lot of times we're people of peace to them too, because we are that to them just as much as they are that to us. And you kind of know when you meet somebody because you'll either get this feeling of, oh, I have to go meet this person, and it's like it's exhausting just thinking about visiting with this person because they drain you, right? And you get these negative emotions about even spending time with them. But if it's a person of peace, you're like, I can't wait until I can see this person. I am so excited to see this person. And every time you walk away, you feel encouraged or uplifted or just lighter in some way, or even just smiling when you leave because they have made your life better in some way. And it's amazing how, when you surround yourself with people of peace, how much it changes your world, right? Because it's not you want to see people, you want to visit with people. It's all of a sudden you don't want to isolate you, and it takes that opportunity for loneliness away when you surround yourself with people of peace because you want to be around them. And so it kind of makes it so that you have a harder time entering into the isolation, loneliness cycle when you surround yourself with these people. And it's so cool because you're helping them in the same way.
Yeah, it's so true. Another thing I was thinking about too, though, is sometimes our loneliness um, comes on like unexpectedly as a result of our circumstances, right? And most recently, you know, even the loss of our dad, right?
Yeah.
He was a cherished person in our life, and then all of a sudden he's gone, right? And there is a part of us that feels lonely,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I can't just go and talk to my dad anymore, right? Um, there is a hole in my heart where only he can fill, right? And so sometimes we might find ourselves feeling lonely and it's something that we have no control over. But I think in those moments we can recognize that it's a loneliness that's coming as a result of a circumstances we have, but we can still use the same tools, right? We can still reach out. And I think, one good thing to do is like to be willing to share and be vulnerable. What was one of your biggest coping skills when it came to the loss of dad?
Oh, that's easy. Grief share. And it was something that I was like and looking forward to and something that I was terrified of all in the same moment because, I was wondering if anyone could understand. I was wondering if anyone would care. I was wondering if I'd fit in with this group. I was wondering if I would trip over my own words. I was wondering if, like, I even shared some of my fears with you. Like, can I trust these people with my deepest, darkest stuff right now? Like, because losing dad was so hard. And what I found was people who understood. None of us had the same situation. Like there wasn't a single same loss in the room. But yet I knew every time I went, it was a safe place. I knew that every time that I went, I could share my heart and people understood. And they may not have been in the same circumstance, but they were suffering the same loss. the same feelings of loss. And it was amazing to be understood that way. It was amazing to be able to share my heart freely and know that I could trust them and they understood. They cared. They wanted to be there for me and I wanted to be there for them. And it honestly, I don't know if I would have made it through as well as I did without it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and it gave me a lot of coping tools as well, because each week they teach you about how to cope with like losing a loved one and what that looks like. And I've carried those through, following months. And it's really kept me going. And, sometimes you need to reach out to groups or stuff when you've lost someone or when you've had a circumstance where you're forced into loneliness. You need to find a group of people who can understand you. And one of those, I would recommend Grief Share, definitely, because it helped me so much. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. But I want to also leave space for other people to experience that and to be able to have that opportunity as well. So I mean, if one of our family members asked me to go with them because they didn't want to go alone, I would do that. But
Mhm.
yeah, like it so significantly helped me. And so it's changed the way that I even look at group therapy sessions or group peer sessions in how helpful they are and how like so much can happen just by you sharing your heart. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, because you feel heard, you feel loved, you feel understood, right? And I mean, they were all complete strangers to you. And same for
Mm-hmm.
me, because I did grief share as well. And I had the same experience where, I didn't know most of the people in the room, but yet there was a safety where I could share. And I did feel heard and I did feel like people understood and they could empathize with what I was going through um and even share their own stories. She even shared from their perspective and to even give, me other things to consider in regards to even my own loss, right? And so that was super beneficial. And I think, maybe you're not dealing with a loss, but maybe you're struggling with, special needs children or a parent with dementia, like whatever those things may be, like you might feel lonely in that if nobody else in your circle of friends is dealing with those issues. And so that would be an awesome time for you to reach out to a group, like a support group, and that meets regularly that you can connect with and actually talk to people about issues that you all relate on. And I think that is a really incredible resource that we have available to us. And, a lot of times you can just search online for a group in your area, and it could be an incredible resource to you when you're starting to feel loneliness or feel like you are alone in what you're going through.
And I think sometimes we shy away from it because we're like all up in our head. Like, seriously, I was so up in my head before I went. And then after the first night, I was like, yeah, I needed to be here. This is perfect for me. And, I think sometimes we just think, well, that's just for people who, really need help, right? We don't think of ourselves as people who really need help. But honestly, if you're feeling lonely in any of those circumstances, find a group session and at least try it out. If you try it out and find that it doesn't work for you, well, great. You've at least tried it. But I pretty much am assured that you will get something out of it if you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you can take anything out of this conversation today, I think there's a couple things. The first one is it's important to be vulnerable with those that you trust. Another thing would be to recognize that you're not alone. There are others who are out there experiencing what you are experiencing. They understand how you feel, and it's okay to go find those people. It's okay to share with those people. And you know, come out of the isolation, right? We don't want to isolate when we're feeling lonely. And that, if you find yourself starting to isolate, that is a good indication that you need to start reaching out, that you need to start looking outside of yourself and finding other resources. And another thing that came to mind too was, and this one actually for me is kind of huge, but when I start feeling like I want to isolate or I'm feeling lonely, I start looking outside of myself. I start looking around myself. Who is in my life? Where is there a need? Where is there somebody who could benefit from me reaching out to them? And as I step out to, be a friend to someone else and to meet a need, then I actually find that my loneliness goes away, right? My focus is no longer on what I'm lacking and what I don't have, and I'm able to connect with someone else and meet that need in them. And, there's something that I receive from that. There's power in random acts of kindness, even. And so, for whatever reason, if you're feeling loneliness and you're feeling like you can't get out of it, and you're in a place where you're wanting to isolate, Connie and I just encourage you, reach out to someone. Don't stay in that place. There is so many resources available to you. And, don't wait for your friends or your family to come to you. Take the first step. Be willing to say, I'm struggling and I need some help. I'm struggling and I need someone to just listen. They might not be able to solve your problem, but at least they can journey with you in what you're going through and be there to support you and comfort you. And, maybe they will have an answer for you, but for whatever reason, they are in your life right now, I believe, and you need to start reaching out to them so that you don't have to be stuck in loneliness. So, Connie, do you have any other last thoughts before we close up for today?
Embrace the people of peace in your life. Don't be afraid to go to group sessions if you need it. And I would say, thirdly, if you find yourself lonely and alone and isolating, think about who else in your world might be feeling that same way. And maybe reach out to them, because if you can't connect on anything else, you can connect on that. And then you both won't feel alone in that moment.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time on the NOSA Unleashed podcast. Bye.
Bye.